G'day. In this tutorial, I'm going to walk you through using RSpec to test console outputs in Ruby. So I'm going to show you three distinct ways of getting the output and testing it with RSpec. So the first way is using the expect output to standard output, which is the more typical one, and I'll just show you the mistake that people make with it, that I made with it, and just explain that really briefly. The next thing I'll show you is how you can use regular expressions to extract or find a small part of a string that's being output. I find that to be more useful because often you want to test that it's printing something, but you don't necessarily know where it's going to be printing it to, or that there might be a few new lines or tabs around what's being printed, and you just want to test that it's coming up in the output. And lastly, I'll show you how to automate that, or how to make that a little bit cleaner by writing a custom function using RSpec's define method in order to neatly write a test that you can then repeat. So let's get into the video. Okay, first things first, we actually have to create the project and everything within it. So let's go. Okay, there we go. I've generated the basic project. We've got the spec installed, our bundle is installed, we've got everything installed, and so now we can just start and quickly develop a project. Obviously just a mock-up one that would say, okay, def, let's just say hello, and print, or let's say puts hello. I clear this now. Okay, now we go straight to our spec helper, our index spec, and we define the method. So this might be a good warm-up for some of you who haven't touched RSpec in a while. The snippet describe, we're describing our index file. These are supposed to be more so for classes, however, I'm just using it to give a bit of context. Now we're describing the hello method. So I go dot hello, context, given a method called to hello, it returns, or I should say, prints hello to console. Okay, so now it's about implementing it. There's one, so this might be the only answer that you need for your particular implementation. There's just one thing that you've got to avoid, and that's these parentheses. You're actually passing a method that then prints, so you actually want to test using the curly braces. So you'll say expect with curly braces. Hello. This won't work because we haven't included it, so we can use require relative, and then we can call, because we're in the spec file, dot to get out of it, index.rb. We can actually just go index. Now we'll have access to hello, and we can say expect hello to output. Now, because it's a put statement, and it's printing hello, it's going to be hello, new line, to standard out. If I run RSpec, it works, okay? If you tried using parentheses, it's actually not going to work because you're telling it that you've passed it a value to compare, but you've actually passed it, I get this bug with my terminal. You've actually passed it a proc or a block, or I guess you can think of it as a chunk of code that needs to be executed, because hello's a method. So remember to use these curly braces. This also works if you have nested methods. So if I was to then underneath that put hello there, and then I was to call greeting in here, it would also work to say okay. So we can actually lump the things together. Sometimes, however, when you've got complex methods, so right here we're just nesting it once, but maybe you've got put statements that are conditional, and it's, maybe you're going to be testing many different outputs, and maybe you just wanted to test that a certain line was getting outputted. Maybe you didn't need to know that hello was in there, you just wanted to know that it was printing there. Okay, if you wanted to test that, you can use regex. So the way that regex or regular expressions work is that it basically passes a filter over the output, and that enables you to see if it just includes the thing that you want it to include. So the way we can do that is by saying, or by using, now first of all, backslashes like this denote that we're using a regular expression dot quote. Also, you'll need to use string interpolation, so it's the hash and the curly braces in here, regular expression quote, and then we can basically give it a quote, so we know that there is included. So regular expression quote, that's a built-in Ruby method that's basically going to convert this into a regular expression that can be filtered. So it's expecting it to output this regular expression. That means that we're not trying to match it exactly, we're just looking for where, or we're looking to see if this gets returned. So if we run this now, it works, but if I put in some random word in here that wasn't, that we know is not getting outputted, it doesn't work. So that's good news, because this is on, to be honest, it's like a nuclear bomb. If you really need to get to this, it's because you don't really know exactly what's getting output, and this is a pretty good way of doing it. To just add a little bit more to this video, because it might be a little bit hacky, and to have this here without an explanation could be a little bit difficult to read. So let's say you wanted to define a method that does this. I tried doing it and it's actually not trivial. So that's why I'm going to add it to this video, because it's not trivial and it's cool and it makes a lot more readable code. So let's go out of this. So first of all, you're going to have to require Stringio. I'm reading off a different project I did just earlier. Now, RSpec has an API called describe that comes off the matches module, or it's not describe, define. Yeah, I'm in a video right now. Okay. In this segment, we're going to figure out how to create a custom RSpec test. So it's going to work something like this. Instead of having all of this stuff here, we're going to be able to say expect, still have to use a block, hello, to include somewhere, and then we'll take an expression, so hello, instead of all of this. So we're going to actually define our own. This is more just an exercise to see how it would be done, and I'm sure there's a lot more useful ways of doing this or using this. But let's see how we would do this for this very niche situation. So it's pretty niche because we're using a block, but we're also trying to test the output. So those are two sort of uncommon things. First thing I'm going to need is requiring string input output. We're going to need that because we're going to be testing what's getting output to the console, and with the Stringio library, I can actually change where all those functions are sending like the print statements and the put statements, I can change where they are going. So that's why we're going to use stringio. We're going to use RSpec's inbuilt method. So that's RSpec match, I think it's matches, or is it matchers? I'll just check an old project just to double check. Yeah, it's matchers dot define. So it's their define API, include somewhere, do expected. So that's the expected string that we're handling there. Last thing we'll do, just for the quick templating, is we need to use supports block input, or expectation, sorry. You need this line in here or else it just will not work, because not because of expected, but because of, so it's going to be match do actual. In order to use actual here, so first of all, let's look at how these parameters line up. In the statement here, we've got expect, we're putting in a block, we're using the to method on that block, and then include somewhere. What we put inside this block here is going to end up being our actual in this function that we're defining, or in this matcher that we're defining. So we need supports block expectations to have this actually be a block. Otherwise, if it wasn't a block, if it was just an expression that we were testing the value of, we wouldn't need to do this. We wouldn't have to have this line, rather. And then we're matching to actual. So as you can see, it's kind of a niche situation. Now what I want to do is everything that gets output here, I want to be output to a string that I can read from. So in order to achieve this, I first set the standard output to a temp, so that I can set it back later. And then I do quite a weird assignment where I'm setting standard output to temp, but I'm also setting that to string input output new. This here has the function, well, the reason that we do this is so that we can later invoke temp.string, and that'll tell us everything that got output to the console, essentially. Last thing we'll do is we'll ensure that before this this definition ends, we're setting standard out. We're going to set that back to temp. Okay. So now how we actually do the comparison is we say actual.call, like that. So that's actually calling the method hello once it's passed in here. And all the output, instead of going to the traditional standard output, which is your terminal, it'll actually go to temp, which is a string IO. And from that, we can create our expectation. Now, this match block is part of RSpec. And the way it works is if you return true within it, then it's a thumbs up to RSpec that the comparison was successful. If it's anything other than true, or if it's false or falsy, then it's going to, it's not going to register. It's going to say that it did not match. So at this stage, what I can do to test it is I can say temp.string, so that converts everything that's being sent to the temp string IO, match. This match has nothing to do with RSpec. This is a Ruby function, and it's matching as in it's trying to say, is the string that we've got, does it include? So I'll first show you with IRB just to make it more clear that this is not an RSpec thing, you know. So let's say you got hello world, and I go match world. It gives you some match data. But if I was to do this and I put in another word in there, you get nil. And nil is of course falsy. Right, so like if I said puts nil it puts no because nil's falsy. So that's how we're going to be using this. This is going to return. So okay, so now we can copy this regex expression that we had down here. There might be a cleaner way of doing this, but this is just one example of how you can do it. And then replace this string for expected. Okay. So now it's trying to match that regex expression that you're passing in through expected, so hello, out of what's coming out of the function call. And it's reading it from the string output, which we've redirected to temp. So it's a bit complicated, but the benefit of doing it this way is that now it's in a tidier function, and I guess semantically it just makes it's pretty clear. There's probably a better way of doing it, but this is just one way, and hopefully this opens up Pandora's box of opportunities and possibilities with RSpec in this way, because I know I'm not the best at this. So let's see now what that does when I run RSpec. RSpec works in success, and then of course we have to test that it would fail if this expectation was off. So just to revise, hello prints out hello, and then it also prints out a greeting. But remember, there's a new line coming after this because we're using puts. So instead, if I said that it was going to print out happy for whatever reason, it fails, as we'd expect. So I guess I've presented to you three kind of unique ways to test the output to the console using RSpec. Hopefully that solved whatever problem you were having and gave you a little stepping stone to the solution that you were looking for. Cheers.